Thank you, Jacob. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council, for the August 9th budget workshop meeting. Tonight we have two departments that we will be reviewing for you. First will be Public Works, followed by Planning and Development, which will include not just Planning and Development, but also the Redevelopment Agency budget as well, Director Ireland. Just from a time constraint perspective, just a reminder that we do have a council briefing that is scheduled to start at 6:15. You should have a separate invitation for the joining of that particular meeting. So hopefully from a budget perspective, we can wrap up by about 6 o'clock or so to give everyone a few minutes break between this meeting and the next one at 6:15. With that, I'm going to turn over the presentation of the Public Works Department to Director Dennis Barron, and he will talk to you a little bit about some of the initiatives his department is looking at for this upcoming year. Dennis, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be brief, or at least I was advised to be brief, to give you extra time for questions and answers if you have them. So my department basically has four realistically tasked initiatives that we're trying to look forward to pushing for FY22. The first is working towards a more programmatic approach to how we do maintenance. That includes helping to finally get implemented the pavement condition index and get away from how we've always been doing it to more of a programmatic approach to know that we're working on the worst roads first, and then how that all lays out in a budget oriented fashion. Also looking at completing the water master plan with the deliverable that should be due here anytime. Help to look at those assets and determine what we need to do going forward to be able to improve on those. Master plan and the stormwater master plan are in the works right now with the scoping and fees with the engineering firms. Jones Edmonds is going to be working on the sewer master plan. We're real close to having that complete, having that issued to them to get their process moving on that one. The stormwater master plan, we did a small scale study on the south waterways to help kind of kick off the overall stormwater master plan, which will follow upon the results of the study, the smaller scale study that was done on just the south end ponds. That's realistically the first initiative that we're going to be focusing on. The second initiative that we have is the creation of an internal sewer cleaning and televising crew. With a couple of retirements and some people moving around, I have a vacant supervisor position. I have a vacant, or I have a person that's going to be coming over from the D&C department. And in the budget's included a new person, which would actually be an equipment operator. And this is going to create a 3-person crew to help operate the camera van and the VACCON on a more consistent basis. We do have contracts out there where we utilize subcontractors for that work. While we'll continue to use subcontractors where it seems feasible, there's times that we've had situations where we needed a camera crew and or the VACCON immediately, and we haven't been able to have the personnel to be able to do it. So this crew will be designated to that. If you remember earlier this year, we approved, or you approved some improvements to the camera van, and we do have the camera van back, and they are actually doing training right now on that. So our camera van will be up to speed with current technology. So we'll be able to operate and function a little bit more efficiently with that creation of that crew. Third initiative we have is actually replacing the Public Works storage structure that we have on the facility, or had on the facility. In 2017, Hurricane Irma come through and actually damaged an overhead shade structure that we had to help for our equipment. We've had that removed, and we have received some funding to be able to help kickstart the rebuild of that. So that's the third initiative, which is actually to get that ball rolling and actually get us a structure to have our equipment out of the sun and out of the weather more so. And our final overall is to really kickstart the asset management project. While this will tie in at some point in time to the ERP process, what we're finding out in the water and wastewater predominantly, as well as the actual assets we have in the field, We don't have any single active way of measuring maintenance to predict preventative maintenance. One of our programs is actually just a series of Outlook invitations to tell us when we need to do things, which is every time you do something, you then got to create a new recurring invitation so that that maintenance schedule doesn't get lost. Very inefficient, very time consuming, as well as the person that created that retired. And so, yeah, we're currently functioning with what they had scheduled and what we could figure out to do forward. So while at some point in time, that project will basically get on the same track as ERP and be able to function in with Munis or whatever system we have going forward. The idea is to actually kickstart that to get figured out what software is going to work for the departments and then get the start of Public Works assets actually being in and recorded as we move through that process. And overall, that's the four main initiatives that we have for Public Works. The budget itself, most projects, I don't think there's a whole lot of really new projects that are actually in the budget documents. You remember we discussed the chlorination scenario, which is actually in the new plan to actually get that rolling for next year for both the water department as well as the wastewater department. So we have a couple of other projects, like I said, that you've already approved that we should have on those documentation. So I'm free for questions now, or if Mike wants to wait towards the end for additional individual questions, however he wants to operate this.
Thank you, Dennis. Before Q&A with the council on your budget, could you also talk a little bit about Senate Bill 64 and the guidance that you got from FDEP regulators when you went to your permitting class down in South Florida a few weeks ago? A little bit of background for council. Senate Bill 64, we've mentioned a few times to you, which has some requirements on the city. There's nothing currently in the budget document or even the 5-year CIP to address Senate Bill 64. And a big part of what Dennis has been doing over the past couple of months and over the next couple of months is trying to get his head around what it is we need to do for documentation and notification to the state. So Dennis, maybe if you can talk a little bit about guidance that you've heard from the regulators who are enforcing this.
So Senate Bill 64, of course, is identifying the elimination of wastewater streams flowing into surface water. So in other words, after we get done processing our wastewater, we send it in a joint effluent line that goes up to Mayport, goes out into the St. John's at the mouth from where the St. John's intersects with the Atlantic Ocean. According to the Senate Bill 64, we have to figure out a plan on eliminating that so that we do not actually emit waters into a surface water discharge. Now, with that being said, what I did find out when we were down, when I was down at the permitting school, in talking with the DEP representative, was we have to have filed by November 1st our plan of what we think we're going to do. And that includes any and all ideas that we can spitball on a board. And DEP will then take the next 9 months to look at all of those ideas and determine whether those seem feasible, realistic, approved, unapproved, and kind of provide us some feedback back to those particular items. So right now, what we've really been doing internally in the department is putting this list of alternatives together. Everything from doing absolutely nothing and claiming that we actually have a benefit to leaving our discharge exactly where it's at, because that helps prevent the salinization line of the Atlantic Ocean from creeping farther into the St. John's River bed, to looking at moving our discharge to different areas to be able to do a wetlands discharge process, to utilizing our wastewater as a potable use or a potable drinking water. So we've got about 15 different options right now that we've kind of been playing around with. So I think our true answer is going to be putting about all 15 of those on our process paperwork to say, hey, these are what we want to investigate. By submitting the plan by the November 1st deadline, you have till 2032 to complete this project. whatever option you choose to do, or whatever option and path we decide to be feasible, we feel it's better to let DEP tell us, no, that's not a feasible option, than it is to not list it at all and wish we would have later on, even if we really don't know how far that idea will really go. So the idea behind that is file our paperwork by November 1st. We'll have till 2032 to put together a plan on making something happen to be able to eliminate it, unless, of course, they legislate it and make some changes to it over the next 10 years. If we do not make the November 1st deadline, you still have to meet the guidelines, but you only have until 2028 to do it. So for whatever reason, they decided their penalty was just, if you don't file the paperwork, is just shave 4 years off and you still have to do it. So either way, we have to do it. It's not a question of how, it's just a matter of when. So the department's really working hard behind the scenes to try to put together any possible viable options to be able to put on paperwork to submit to DEP. And like I said, the gentleman from DEP that I talked to, he suggested we submit every single idea, even if it doesn't even sound feasible at all, because it can always be excluded. It gets a little bit harder to include things that you don't put on it when you first time you submit it.
Awesome. Thank you, Dennis. With that, we'd like you to open up the floor to council members if you have any questions on Public Works budget. The first hand that I see is Councilmember Jansen, followed by Councilor Meza.
Most of House Bill 64, that's going to be in future budgets, if I'm not correct in that one. And obviously, if we could see a rank structure like leaving as is, I'm sure that's not much of a budget effect there versus some of your plans. I'd like to see them somewhere down the line in a cost order, I guess, from least to most expensive, and take a sneak peek at those as they arise.
From talking with Mike, I think we've already talked about putting it on a potential briefing between now and the November 1st deadline. If we've got enough information to provide. Like I said, a lot of it is pre-engineered spitball and ideas. So that's exactly how you suggest we're listing them. That's exactly how we're listing them in our defense right now, is what's the cheapest alternative to do, all the way down to, like I said, installing an RO plant and storage to be able to look at potable reuse as ultimately the final alternative, because that's probably going to be the most expensive alternative.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the work that you do for our city.
Thank you, sir.
Councilor Meza?
Dennis, yes, I have a question that I think maybe Mike will probably answer this as well. Now, this would, the financial impact is still yet to be determined, correct? And I'm assuming once the state comes back with information, then we could kind of guess how much money needs to be put aside.
Realistically, until we pick out exactly what alternatives we want to go through, we might have some dollars in engineering that we spend over the next few years to investigate some of these alternatives to say, no, this is not feasible at all, or yes, this is feasible, or exactly what kind of true expenses we're going to get. Our first go around is going to be a pretty high level guesstimate of what kind of costs and space we're going to need to be able to do this. All this comes with a footprint of some form, whether that's in deep injection wells, whether that's building an RO plant with additional storage, whether that's expanding irrigation to get rid of things. I mean, we've got a lot of different ideas, but yeah, I think the plan, I believe, would be is to work over the next several years, putting our final plan into place as to what we're going to do. Bring forward those ideas and work with finance to figure out what's going to be the best one that we can be able to get completed by that 2032 deadline, if not before.
Okay, and the second question on your performance measures, P1, G3, I1, and P1, G3, and I2 on your streets. I see in 2020, what is that, 1.31 miles that you guys did, and then on 2021, it's 4.3. And 2022 is 3 to 5 miles that you guys plan on resurfacing?
Yes, sir. That's just a general average of what we do. Like I said, it was low for the actual 2020 numbers because we got them right in at the end of the budget year for what actually got done. So the numbers, like I said, are 3 to 5. What we're going to get away from is a number of miles scenario, and we're going to be switching that piece over to basically a dollars piece as we move into the PCI piece, because as we know, we're only going to have a fixed amount of dollars in the budget to do. So while sometimes if you're doing a mild resurface, it'll take very minimal dollars, where if you're doing a complete construction rebuild, it may get very well major. So those numbers are very, very different from one end of the spectrum to the other. So we try to use every dollar we can and stretch it as far as we can.
Okay, see, and have you guys been able to identify future roads that need some TLC in the near future?
We actually have an existing 5-year plan that was the old school way of doing it, which we have, and we're kind of using that. But at the same time we're using this new PCI process where an engineer's actually evaluated all those roads, and we're using which roads it says to do along with the ones that we had planned to do. Obviously, sometimes it makes sense to do every road in a subdivision as opposed to skip 3 roads. And that happens sometimes is the PCI says, well, these 3 roads are still good, but all the rest of the subdivision is horrible. But you can imagine the political influence that would have if we go into a subdivision and do all the rest of the roads, but we skip 3. That has huge political impacts because people don't like to see that you've worked in their subdivision, but you didn't fix their road. So a lot of times we have to take some of that with a grain of salt. So last year was the first year we kind of finished with the this year, and last year we finished with what the old way was. Now we're trying to look at both of those measures. The one caveat is we've got to figure out what the minimum road standard is, because obviously the computer gets to a point where it says the road standard is so bad, you just need to let it go to complete gravel before you completely rebuild it. And we all know that's really not an answer. The computer says that's an answer, but politically, as well as just driving around town, that is not an answer. So we have to figure out how low can that road number actually go before we have to do something. What I'm hoping we can do is get that put together with some budget impacts, to where that might mean that I'm here at budget time next year asking for extra money to be able to keep those lower end roads from getting down to that horrible place, before they're actually due to be done.
Okay. And last thing, thank you and your department for everything you guys do. And I just want to point out where you said meet or exceed all regulatory standards for our operations and performance. I like that very much, and I hope in the near future, in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and maybe for the long run, that we could exceed all these standards beyond anything else. So
that's always our intention. We appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
And just to supplement the answer to the question that Councillor Meza had regarding roadway conditions, as a reminder to council, with the new fuel surtax that has gone into effect, we are expected to have increased revenues of that gas tax, of which a portion can be utilized to help supplement what we're currently spending on roadway maintenance. And that's a conversation that I've had with both our finance department as well as Public Works. So that'll actually be helpful to us going forward. Next is Councillor Stokes.
Hi, good evening, Dennis. You mentioned in your fiscal year 22 big projects that, getting the stormwater master plan was a big thing. But looking at your budget issues and uncertainties, I see that stormwater rates were set in 1990. Been a long time since that. So because of that and all that your department is looking to do in the future for stormwater management, do you foresee any hike in the stormwater rate to or asking for a hike in the stormwater rate to compensate or offset that master plan?
So as the stormwater master plan gets completed and they put the plan in place, they'll be looking at the projects that we currently have listed in the CIP, basically the big plans that are in the CRA that are heavily funded, as well as the other projects that we've called out. And they'll kind of make the assumption that those are completed. And then what they'll do is overlook the future projects as they see them, identify any problematic areas, any issues and concerns that we have, basins that need to be addressed, outfalls that need to be addressed, sea level rise, potentially needing to change the levels in ponds to be able to do that. They'll take all of those things into effect and then put those into a financial order as to what we need to do and how we need to do it. And then part of that plan will actually be to make some recommendations to our current rate structure, which we'll have at some point in time when those when that plan gets completed, to come back forward to you guys with a briefing with some discussions, because obviously if our rates haven't been adjusted since that long, there may need some be adjustment. But if we're going to do that, we need to be able to do that wisely. We need to be able to do that smart enough to know what we have in the wings to be able to get done, what needs to be get done. And then how can we get it so that we don't get to a point where, you know, our fees are so exorbitant that we have an excess of funds when we get done with all these projects in there and we're trying to, you know, figure out what to do next. So that will be a recommendation by the engineering firm as to what we need to do, how we need to get there, looking at our rates and making some of those suggestions to us. And that'll be something that Mike and I bring forward to you at a briefing once that gets completed. That'll probably be end of the year, calendar year this year, potentially maybe even spring next year before we actually get something like that in our hands to be able to do that. So while it won't necessarily affect the budget we have in front of us, yeah, we're seeing some expectations that we're going to have to really look at some of these rate structures for public works. We all know what we're dealing with solid waste, and we're going to have some discussions coming forward about that as well. And again, that's going to be some additional determinations of what we need to do with those things that haven't been touched in quite a long time.
Thanks, Dennis. I was going to follow up with sanitation, and I think you kind of answered that question there. So I see that, you know, our rates were set a long time ago there, but we're also having issues with the sanitation company. So just wanted to see if we'd thought about any rate increases and possible new vendors, because if we go somewhere else, I'm assuming it will be a rate hike plus the next contract. I'm assuming will be more expensive. I think you mentioned fuel surcharges and et cetera further on in the packet.
I think as of right now, we have a sanitation discussion coming to you at the second briefing in September, if I am correct, where we're going to be discussing performance. We're going to be discussing what we have now, what our alternatives are, which direction you want to see us going, what direction we actually take sanitation moving forward.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Dennis. I have some questions going back to the performance measures that Mr. Meza was asking you about. There's some in here that, so I see we've got numbers that show as of April 2021, which is about, what, halfway through the fiscal year. And so there's several things like the replacement of 2,500 feet of old 2-inch and larger galvanized and cast iron water mains, replacing the water services, water valves, and then also repairing, constructing 2,000 feet of sidewalk. So those four in particular, when I look at those numbers, they are way lower than half of what the goal is. So, or actually I'm sorry, less than half of what was done in the previous year. So I'm wondering, you know, what are we looking at here with regard to these numbers?
So our fiscal year FY21 water main project was actually bid, and the bid opening was actually last Wednesday. So I'm currently in the process, the department's currently in the process of evaluating those bids. That will yield to me coming to you to award a project to the lowest responsible bidder, either the first or second council meeting in September. I'm expecting it to be the second just because tomorrow's the deadline to get them in to make the first meeting, and I don't have anybody back to be able to actually give me the final sign off on what those are. So that will help dramatically increase those numbers simply because that project will already be funded and it's already a go to be able to move ahead. So that'll help to increase those numbers. The sidewalk numbers is a little bit of a moving target. Those dollars float there in that account. And so if I don't meet to get the 2,000 foot, if you look at the last year number, you'll see that it's significantly higher at 7,800. So that's basically like 4 years of work. So what we kind of do is move those funding around and keep it in that category to try to make it worthwhile. And I think as you see the urban trails piece, there's obviously going to be a demand for spending that money a little faster, even though it might be outside of the urban trails, to be able to put sidewalk in key areas to help complete that. So whether we meet that number by the end of the fiscal year or not, that funding stays in that particular category for those sidewalks and it doesn't go away. So it comes back to be able to get it back in subsequent years to be able to utilize to do a larger project.
Okay. And you were also talking about the focus being on maintenance and I guess getting a good maintenance plan together. Are the replacement of street signs, because this was something that I brought up last year, because along 3rd Street, we'd had a lot of the street signs like on the avenues that were just non-existent. And I know that your department has been putting those back because, you know, when we have visitors in Jack's Beach, they're not going to be able to find 10th Avenue North if there's no signs along 3rd Street that tell them where, you know, where the avenues are. Is that part of the maintenance plan? I'm assuming all of those types of things will be part of that.
Those things are, and as we get through this process of getting assets identified and actually put into GIS, we can put those on a replacement system. Now 3rd Street and Beach Boulevard come with a special caveat by being FDOT corridors. We always run the risk of rolling through there and replacing all of the signs and then having FDOT complete a project through there, taking all our signs out, putting their signs up. So it gets to be very touchy as to what we do or how we really do it when it comes to A1A and Beach Boulevard. But Taylor, when he's working through those, you'd have to see his production shop and how he does what he does. He gets all of the signs in order to go down and he'll jump on a particular street and he'll go to every intersection and replace every sign systematically going north or south as they do. So while he spends some time in the shop getting everything together, when he actually rolls out, he'll take 15 signs and then one day he'll do 15 intersections and put all the signs on one particular corridor be replaced all at once. Now, we do call him off for special projects and send him other directions depending on what becomes missing or especially, you know, signs that we have to have up immediately, other potential quick projects that we throw at him. He tends to get a lot of those. So we do those as we can. And then, like I said, he goes back to systematically doing it. I'll try to see if I can get down there and take a picture and send it out because it's really interesting to see them all laid out on the floor because he'll literally have 15 or 20 of them all laid out and done on the floor before he rolls out with the truck to go put them up. And so Taylor is very conscious on signage, very conscious on post placement. He spends a lot of time to make sure these signs go up. They stay where they need to be. They don't turn, they don't rotate. They're perfectly level and perpendicular to the world so that almost too much so. But so anyway, A1A especially and Beach Boulevard comes with its own little bit of caveat, but I know he is working on some sign replacements on all corridors, but I know he's like I said, he's working his way through town.
And then also I know that we've got some construction of non-ADA walkovers that are planned for the coming year. Do you know where those are probably going to be that we'll be working on in the next year?
For construction this coming November?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't have it handy, but again, that was the second bid that came in this past Wednesday. So that will be on your desk for approval. The second meeting in September with the lowest responsible bidder for construction of 8 walkovers, which includes the one final ADA walkover down on the south end that we had not gotten with the other 3 ADA. So this will be 1 ADA and 7 non-ADA ramps that will be constructed I don't have the exact which ones they are going to be. I can either follow that up with an email tomorrow, or I can bring it to you in September because you'll have everything you need at that point.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We can just see it in September. Thank you.
Yeah, the caveat we put on that was, of course, the understanding that they have to work around sea turtle season. So this will become the time frame when we're normally coming back to you to be able to get approval for those to be built, is so the contractor can get all their materials and everything staged up and ready to go, so they can be on the beach November 1 to be able to do what they need to do around non-sea turtle season.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Nichols.
Hey, Dennis, thank you for all you're doing for the city. You're doing a good job, and we really appreciate it. Can you talk to me a little bit about roadway maintenance program? And just for an example, there's an ongoing pothole issue at Marsh Landing Parkway that I think I've been contacted about 30 times from different people, and it appears that somebody's going in and putting cold patch in, it's not holding. Do we have the capabilities of milling a section out and really fixing that? Or can you just talk to me about your roadway maintenance program to alleviate potholes?
Yes, sir. So there's a piece of Marsh Landing that was actually called out to be redone last year. That's realistically the section that went from A1A down and around to South Beach Parkway. But I think the potholes you're talking about are actually closer to the off-ramp of the JTB coming down towards the Marsh Landing intersection. So if I believe I'm right, that section is actually belonging to maintenance to FDOT. However, you are exactly right. We're continuing to put cold patch in that hole because it is a recurring problematic system. So while we continue to notify FDOT of it, we also go out and continually put cold patch in it to keep from getting additional calls and complaints and protect vehicles as they come off of that JTB off ramp. So it's a little bit of both on that one, but I will follow up with that one and find out what FDOT's process is.
Okay, if you need me to make a call, their asset management group, I mean, they need to get on that. That's really becoming a hazardous situation, but I mean, it makes sense that it's DOT, but definitely you just got to pick up the phone and let them know and get them to stick to a time frame of repairing that. But I appreciate the effort.
Yes, sir. That's like I said, sometimes we have to, sometimes we find it easier to actually do the work and get through it than it is to continually harp. I know we have issues sometimes with COJ when it comes to Penman. If it's something small, it's easier for us to take care of than it is to try to jump through the hoops to get them to be able to come out and be able to take care of it. So I know we try to do that, but I will put that on my follow-up list and I'll address that tomorrow with street department. And we'll make sure I got something in the works for when FDOT is going to fix that, or if they're not, when we can get a project together to do it. Good
deal. And like I said, if you need me to reach out to the FDOT maintenance department to get with their asset management, I mean, that's what they're paid. That's what they're paid to do. And when I called them about the one in front of Wits over there, they were there the next day. So
okay,
just let me know or whatever I can do to help also. But we definitely need to get that fixed. I appreciate everything.
Fantastic. I'll put that on my radar. We'll make sure we get that taken care of right away.
Councillor Dumont.
Thank you. Is Chet waiting to talk or is his hand still up? Okay, just wanted to make sure I wasn't jumping the queue. This is just to answer Sandy's question for the walkovers for the next year. It's 6th Avenue North, Latham Plaza between 1st and 4 Points, 1st Avenue South, 4th Avenue South, 11th Avenue South, 13th Avenue South. All of those are the money's coming out of the CRA. And the general fund will be the ADA at 16th South, and the final regular walkover is at 34th Avenue South.
Ms. Dumont, for having that information faster than I could dig through my computer to find it.
Thank you for sending it to me in the first place.
Any other question for Council for Public Works?
I will be
Seeing
staying
none.
on the line. If you come up with something as this meeting gets further, if we have time, I'll still be available towards the end.
Thank you, Dennis. And now we'll switch gears over to Director Heather Ireland, who will talk to you about planning and development and the redevelopment agency. Heather, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is my first budget workshop, so thank you for patience with me as I work through some of this information. Our budget hasn't changed much from last year, so just wanted to focus on a few key items, something new that we're working on, and want to give you some updates on major development and redevelopment projects, and then I'll talk about the CRA for a little bit. And our CRA coordinator is also on the line, and she'll provide you with some additional CRA project information as well. So something new that we have been doing in the planning department since February is we like to call it the Weekend Warrior Program. And we heard council last year express some concern over code enforcement issues, and we do only have one code enforcement officer, and we have discussed going to two. But what we wanted to take this approach first and see how it worked out. So what we've done is we have taken one of our inspectors. He goes out twice on the weekends, 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. We do not tell anybody where we're going or what times. Sometimes it's during the day, sometimes it's at night. But we like to kind of, catch people off guard, if you will. So we started focusing on flutter flags, snipe signs, things we know are a problem. Lighting that's in violation of our new sea turtle ordinance. So a couple times we've gone out in the evenings. Unpermitted work that's happening on the weekends, and heavy vehicle parking. And as more issues come up that we need to focus on, we can always shift our attention to those things. Again, we started that in February, and it has resulted in increased compliance with both our sign ordinance and the new turtle lighting ordinance. So, we're very happy about that. And it has resulted in some building permit applications for work that was previously unpermitted. We've got a little bit of numbers for you guys. So we were able to identify 16 projects that were going on without a permit, and all but 2 have come into compliance. So it is making a positive impact. And I hope to have a more detailed report at the end of August, which would be the 6-month mark. If you guys are interested in seeing some more detailed numbers and information on that, we'd be happy to provide that. I'll pause for questions if you guys have any about that before moving on. Okay, I'm going to move on to talking about some of our major development and redevelopment projects that are happening throughout the city. So I think all of you probably know by now that the Element Hotel is up and running and looks very busy, so that's great. It took them a very long time to get moving. They had some supply issues with some of their things coming from overseas. The Oku Sushi restaurant across from the pier parking lot is set to open in the next couple of months. The Jacks Beach Town Center, which is what they're calling the project that's catty corner to City Hall where Campeche Bay used to be, they've been doing underground work, and hopefully they'll be going vertical very soon in the next couple of months. Same thing with Spring Hill Suites on the ocean. The Dolphin Depot property and the site behind the bandshell are both still on hold, but we hope to see some movement on those soon. And this date keeps changing, but currently we've been told the pier should be completed in spring or summer of 22. So fingers crossed for that one. The Waterfall Condos on 14th Avenue South, the name has changed to the Azure Condos. So hopefully we'll see a permit related to that soon as well. And then I think you guys are also aware of the bowling alley renovation. So their permit application was submitted and is still in review. And the 2 big ones that I know you guys are looking forward to, are looking ahead towards the workshops, are Adventure Landing multifamily redevelopment project, and we have an open house scheduled for August 18th, and then the Windward Marina proposed commercial development, and that workshop open house is scheduled for September 1st. So we might also try to schedule some virtual workshops if we can get a date squared away with their representatives. So look forward to maybe an option for a virtual workshop as well. Before I move on to CRA, do you guys have any questions about any of those projects or something I maybe didn't cover?
Councillor Dumont, followed by Councillor Golding.
Hi, Heather. Excellent job on your first briefing. You're knocking it out of the park. Quite the lift for your goals for 2022, comp plan and land development, plus all this other stuff. So, wow. I know if anybody's going to do it, you can do it. I did have a question with the add online permitting with the ERP. Is this just going to automatically go into the workflow?
Yeah, I believe that's how it'll work out. What we kind of have to do is wait until they work out their process for what platforms are going to be used, and then we'll have to wait and see what we can find that's compatible with that.
Great.
So we're on a little hold, but we'll move forward with that as soon as possible.
On page 5, you have total estimated value of permitted construction. Was that a COVID dip? Because we've been going down since 2019. And I thought we've been having larger projects since then.
I think part of why you see the increased number in 19 is some of our bigger projects. Margaritaville, for example, that was a huge one. And that was actually in 2019. So you'll see we're just over the halfway mark for 21 now. So I expect we'll be on par with 20.
Okay, great. And on the next page, do you know what the nuisances outlier of 249 were for 2018?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'll be happy to get some more details on that and get that to you.
Okay, that's just a huge jump. It's the only guy out there on any year, on any category. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councillor Golding.
Thank you, Heather. Welcome to the budget process. So my first question in looking at the goals for 2022, I agree with Ms. Dumont. I know that your department is going to be pretty busy. You've definitely got some very big items going on with the comp plan and land development code. But one thing that I kind of felt seemed to be missing there is the vacation rental compliance. I don't see that we have any goals or any focus on that. And so I wanted to ask you to speak to that if you could.
Sure. And we are continuing with trying to get as many people into compliance as possible. We sent out a round of letters back in May, just over 650 letters, and we're about ready to send out another batch of letters telling people to come into compliance. You know, the tricky part about the short-term rentals, it is quite literally a moving target. You have properties coming online one day, properties no longer being rented the next day, ownership changing. So we are often just kind of chasing that. I don't think we'll ever get 100% compliance, but we still have, its host compliance was purchased by Granicus. We still have them on board. I actually had a conference call with them this morning to talk about some of the other services that they provide. So they have their own online short-term rental application process. They can even accept payments for us if we want to. So I was just hearing more about that, some other services that they can provide to us to try to get better compliance. One thing we found is that if we send out nice letters, we get more of a positive reaction and more applications than if we send out letters, threatening that they're in violation. So a lot of it is just educating people, quite honestly, people that are just new property owners to the area, and they don't even know that they have to pay local, county, and state taxes or register with the city. So the last round of letters we sent out, again, was more educational and kind of just informed people about the program and what they need to do based on the type of property they have. So we found that that was somewhat successful. I'd say we're probably just over the 50% mark with compliance. So we're going to just keep on sending letters and probably do so in the next month or two to try to reach some more folks.
Well, Heather, so you say 50% compliance, and you mentioned in the budget that we processed 45 initial and 15 annual short-term vacation rental applications, but then you sent out 650 letters. So
right. So those numbers have gone up. We have received more applications since this this budget document was put together after we sent out those letters. Part of the delay is that when we notify people, it takes them quite a bit of time to get through the state and the county. So by the time they get to us, we're the last stop. It might have been 2 months since they started their process, maybe 3 with COVID delays and staffing resources and such at the state level. The reason there were over 600 letters sent out is that we sent a letter to everyone. So while condo owners don't have to register with us, we still wanted to make them aware that they still have to pay a local business tax, state, they have to register with DBPR, they need to pay the county tourist tax, and they can't claim homestead exemption. So it was a multi-purpose letter to let them know what they needed to do based on what type of property. So we have a lot of condos that are rentals and a lot less single family homes. So the ones that do have to come into compliance, that number is a lot smaller than that 600.
Okay. And then on page 3, there's mention of the home occupation applications and that 36 were processed. And I guess I wanted to just highlight that because since the home-based business bill, House Bill 403 was passed, are we going to be doing anything to track what kind of businesses or to kind of monitor what kind of businesses we now will have, you know, coming in and filing applications in our residential areas, or anything that you're going to do specifically because of that bill?
No real change on how we track them. They still will be tracked as if they were home occupations, as opposed to, you know, a brick and mortar commercial spot on 3rd Street, for example. It's the same application that the clerk's office uses for both home occ and regular. They just literally stamp it that says home occ. So we're aware when it comes in that the rules might be a little bit different for them, because there are still some things that we can regulate based on House Bill 403. So that's about the best that we can do. Keep tracking them as if they were home occs. We just can't charge them any differently as if they were another business, and regulate certain things.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Councillor Meza.
Yes, Heather, welcome to your first budget process. It's my first time too, so doing good. The question I have, do we have an estimate of maybe how many unregistered short-term rentals might be in the city of Jacksonville Beach?
And unregistered from our local standpoint or from the state standpoint? Because those will be 2 different numbers.
Local?
I don't have that in front of me, but it's something that I could research. Again, it's a moving target, and a lot of it is complicated by the fact that when these homeowners or property owners register with a rental platform, for example, sometimes they don't accurately describe what type of property it is. So they might check the box that it's a house, but it's really a condo. So it pops up in our list as non-compliant when really they might not have to comply. So we almost have to manually go property by property to make sure that they do have to actually follow our ordinance, which is why this last time, again, we sent out letters to everybody so they could have all that information and they'd be able to make a decision whether or not they needed to comply. So it is kind of a hard number for us to track for those reasons.
Yeah, figured. I know there's a lot of houses being sold and investors are buying it and either renting it out for 1 year to 2 years lease or doing the Airbnb. And I guess if we don't find out, then we would have to rely on the neighbors to call the city and say, hey, these guys are doing something illegal. And the second question I have, which is on the Buckets property, do you have an idea why it's on hold, or is it the property behind the Latham, the Seawalk Pavilion?
Yeah, I don't know why. They just have decided to not. They had plans or preliminary plans, and they just have decided to not move forward at this time. Don't know why.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather, there's no other hands raised if you want to move on to the next segment.
Sure. So I'm going to talk about CRA for a minute here, and we have Taylor on that's going to cover a couple items as well. So we have had a CRA coordinator since April, and I could not be happier to have her on board with our department. She is doing a tremendous amount of work. As you guys already know, just some of the things she's worked on in the last 4 months have been things like housekeeping and organizing files and standardizing our processes for, how we do internal procedures and so forth. So one thing that we have implemented, we started in March and will continue moving forward, is to have monthly internal staff meetings, which have been super helpful to everyone to just stay on the same page. We talk about agendas coming up. I think Taylor and I have agendas worked out through September. We know what we're going to be talking about that far out. We're just trying to kind of get ahead with the CRA, wanting to make up a little lost time on some projects due to COVID delays, and then move some other projects forward a little quicker. So I don't want to steal Parks and Rec's thunder, because I know they're going to talk to you guys tomorrow about a lot of the cool stuff they're doing. But just real briefly for the South End CRA, some stuff obviously that overlaps with Public Works, the Ocean Terrace Drainage Project, for example, that's funded with CRA dollars. There was an open house last Wednesday. I don't know if any of you made it to that. I was on vacation, so I did not go. South Beach Park, that's probably the most exciting stuff for me, being a resident of the South End district. You guys have already seen some of these stuff come through, the new playground, shade structures, splash pad, benches around the park, volleyball, pickleball, basketball. So a lot of things happening at the park. And again, I'll let Parks and Rec and Jason talk to you more about that. And then we're doing increased maintenance in the South End as well. I know there were some issues with irrigation and some of the plants dying. So Parks is working on getting all that repaired so we can do new plantings and make it look beautiful again. For downtown, the CRA recently approved the selections for bike racks, seating, bollards, and trash cans in the downtown district. So those are out to bid right now. We're going to see, what the costs on are all of those. We're working with Dix Height on moving that forward. Next up for downtown will be the wayfinding signs and the art master plan and putting that together. Also based on the workshop that you guys had on the 29th, we'll be discussing Latham Plaza, the conceptual plan for that, the pier entryway plan, and also some incentive programs for downtown. And there also is increased maintenance for downtown as well. Maybe some of you saw them out trimming the palm trees today. And I'll also let Taylor talk a little bit about some of the maintenance program that we're helping put together with Parks and Public Works. And lastly, before I turn it over to her, the Urban Trails Master Plan should be kicking off soon. And that will go through both the South End and the CRA district. So some of those will be funded. Some of those pieces of trail will be funded by either of those CRA districts. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Taylor. She's going to talk to you about code enforcement, maintenance, and our business relationships.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Like Heather said, we've got a lot going on. One of the things that we were challenged with creating right after I started was coming up with a way to make sure that we were maintaining a somewhat elevated maintenance plan in the downtown district. So something that I've been working with Parks on, and we actually have a meeting with the superintendent Wednesday to talk about, is where are we at with this maintenance plan? And it's something that's going to take a little bit of time. We wanted to get through a full year where we had 4 seasons to really monitor the frequency of what we need to do. So we're going to have kind of like a quarterly update on Wednesday to sit down in the office and go over the tree trimming, where the irrigation is at, what plants are going to need replanting, the status of some of like the fencing surrounding Latham Plaza, the weeds that are kind of growing up through the sidewalks, and everything in between. And then we're actually going to go do a ride around. Right when I started, I had taken some photos, and then we're going to take those quarterly over this year to kind of see how those progress and make sure that we're staying on track for the maintenance. And then we started doing monthly staff reports to the CRA and internally, and that's just to also keep track, like Heather was saying, of our processes and make sure that we've got some organization to the stuff that we're doing, kind of a method to our madness, if you will. And then we're attending the monthly downtown business meetings. We meet Thursday with a group of realtors to kind of get a grip on what's going on in the downtown and in the beaches as a whole. And then we also had a meeting recently with FDOT. There are some FDOT properties in the South End specifically that the CRA had some interest in kind of partnering with. So that was a really good meeting. And FDOT said they would like to come back regularly to meet with us and keep us updated.
Council have any questions for Heather or Taylor related to CRA? And I see Councillor Dumont followed by Councillor Meza.
Just a simple question. We're not going to have to wait a year for all the mulch to match, are we? And I'm saying that one for Ken. So Ken, I'm sure you're watching. I'm just trying to get a timeline on matching mulch.
We will have a better answer come Wednesday, but if it means one of us has to get out there with some gloves and some mulch, we will do our best to make sure that it does not take a year.
Okay, and all matching, all the same color. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, question on downtown CRA and all the projects you guys have coming. Maybe I'm not seeing it, or I know in the parking lots, especially the Ritz parking lot, the parking lines were just repainted, but the pavement needs some TLC. Is there a project in the near future for that, or any of the other city lots? Since
Not that one. Yeah, not the we call it the Ritz parking lot. Not that one that I'm aware of. That's actually a city-owned lot, so I'd probably have to defer that question to Public Works to see if that's on their radar, because I'm not sure, and I haven't.
the Ritz parking lot is not under the CRA?
No, the city owns that lot, and the lot that the CRA owns is on that same block, but it's on the northwest corner, just north of the Ritz.
Oh, okay.
That's a grass lot that we don't use for parking.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Hoffman.
I just want to say thank you both. I'm hearing a lot of terms that I really want to hear: organization, processes, systems, collaboration, meeting with key stakeholders. So I know everything's not going to happen overnight, but I think you both are working so well together, laying the groundwork for especially taking our downtown where we want to go. I do want to say, I think I heard you say, maybe it was Heather, some incentives, and from our discussion at last week's meeting, but I think we're really looking for probably something a little more comprehensive, like an economic development plan for downtown. So I know that, again, I know that's not going to happen overnight, but I just want to make sure we're thinking a little more globally than just kind of that packet of incentives as we go forward with that. But thank you both, and keep up great work.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the planning and development team? Seeing none, Heather, Taylor, thank you for your participation tonight. That puts us right up against 6 o'clock, and that will give us a 15-minute break until the briefing starts at 6:15. Just a reminder that tomorrow night at 5 o'clock, we have another budget workshop that will include Beaches Energy Services and Parks and Recreation. So you'll be hearing more about their initiatives as well, and some of what you heard Heather talk a little bit about tonight. If there's no other questions on the budget for these departments, I'll thank you all for coming tonight, and we'll talk to you in just a couple of minutes. Thank you.